Welcome to the Music Gardener's Almanac, where we explore the roots and fruits of everybody music. Through conversations with movers and shakers around the world, we discover how these roots and fruits intertwine with all aspects of our lives and the common ground we all share.
Don't forget to water them, though.
Everybody music, it's us.
About 5 years ago, I did this interview with John Myers, then president of the Prescott Center for the Arts, for the Prescott Area Arts and Humanities Council. And this was about 3.5 years after we started comMUSIKey, where music is the key to community. And I was listening to this and I thought, this is some good insight into where I was at and where we were at back in those days. So I want to give some updates to some of the things I said and just let you know that I've thought more deeply about them. One thing is depression. I now know that it goes a lot deeper than I was kind of presenting it, as if just by singing it can go away. And I think that I just want people to know that I don't really quite see it that way. I really see that when you're actually singing, let me just speak for myself, when I'm singing, in that very moment, I'm not feeling depressed. And I think that that's kind of what the blues is, because jazz developed from the blues. And jazz was a magical kind of music that came from impossible living situations. And in this interview, I was talking about the way jazz is taught now and the way jazz has kind of been, I feel, co-opted by, again, the musical industrial complex. So it's not what it used to be. But I think that's enough right now. Like, just listen to this interview and see, if it resonates for you. Okay? Thanks.
Welcome, everybody, to the December issue of My Life in Art. And I'm very pleased to introduce my guest, musician, composer, actor, Jonathan Best. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
You guys can applaud for Jonathan. That's good. Okay. Yeah. There we go. See, we actually have people here. All right. So I will start with my usual first question that I ask everybody, and I think you've watched this a couple of times before, so you probably know what's coming. So where were you born, and if different, where did you grow up?
I grew up and was born in New York State, just one county up from New Jersey.
Very good. And you were there how long?
I moved around a lot, so it's hard to really keep it. But I probably left home around 19.
Okay. Did you go to college, or?
No, I went to California.
Oh, almost as good.
Yeah, better, actually. I recommend it.
All right. And how long have you been in Prescott, and why did you move here?
I moved here in 2002 with my wife, and at the time, and she had a job at Prescott College.
Oh, very good. Okay, so and you have been here since, obviously.
Yeah, ever since. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, according to your bio that you furnished me, you didn't start music lessons, or it seemed like you didn't start music lessons until you were about 14. Is that correct?
Probably more like 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you started
I started playing when I was 14.
Okay. On the piano, I assume?
Maybe 12, actually.
Okay. That's somewhat late for a lot of kids. Most of them start when they're 6, 7. Was that a hindrance at all, starting that late?
No, it was actually it worked for me.
Okay.
Because it was my idea.
Oh.
Because usually when kids start at like 6 and stuff, I think it's more, it's not their idea.
Right.
They're kind of told.
Yes. Well, I'm the youngest of 3, and my mother has told me before she passed away that by the time it got to me, she didn't tell me I had to take music lessons. She asked, and of course at that point,
that's nice to ask.
I said no, like an idiot. So,
but it's never too late.
Well, that's true. I mean, I do play some guitar, but I still don't read music. But
reading is overrated.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. All right. So, with that in mind, was that, or was there an earlier significant first exposure to art?
Before 12?
Yes.
Well, I mean, just life is quite an exposure.
Well, true.
And I was really actually more into drawing. I was really
really?
I would draw.
Are you still drawing now?
Okay.
From time to time?
Oh,
or?
I still love to draw, but I don't kind of have that kind of. There was like a certain passion that I had when I was a kid. I was just like constantly drawing, you know, and it was like an exploration. It was a way. You know, it was an amazing experience.
Oh, I can imagine. Using a pencil? Or?
I was really into the rapidograph.
Which is what? I don't know what that is.
It's a drafter's tool.
Okay.
So it's ink, and the ink flows very steadily from it, and so it's a very fine line. So I would just have fun, like, doodling with that thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there something that was propelling what you were drawing, or is it really just free-flowing?
I think it was childhood angst.
Okay.
I was really, like, just letting, it was flowing out of me like it was flowing out of the pen.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. And what is your educational background?
High school.
Okay.
And just, you know, life.
Life.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
I'm a student of life.
Very good. Now, talk a bit about your time in New York City as a musician, and you also owned a studio. And I assume you sound like you were producing music there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about, and maybe some people we might recognize that you might have recorded?
Well, I moved to New York City. I think it's about 25. I was 25, and that was when I decided I'm going to actually work at being the rock star that I was expecting to be all my life.
Right.
So I thought, now it turns out that it's taking. I'm going to have to put some effort into it. So I moved into New York, and I decided I'm going to just do whatever it takes. And so I was playing on the street. That's what I did.
Wow.
And
what were you
it worked
playing on
really
the street?
well. I had a Casio. At first,
okay.
first I met this guy who played guitar, and then we rented a piano and put it in a warehouse on a dolly, and then we would roll it around the city. We'd actually roll it all the way across town to the east side, where all the money was.
And it stayed in tune?
I had to tune it before each show.
I bet.
And so I discovered that actually the east side, where all the money was not where all the money came to us. So we came back to the west side.
Okay.
And then I realized if I would probably make more money by myself.
Okay.
So I strapped a Casio around my neck with bungee cords. And that worked.
And what kind of music were you playing?
Just my own stuff, you know, just, you know, funky.
Was it instrumental, or were there lyrics?
I would sing. So I had a mic stand. I had a whole setup on a cart that I would wheel around.
And tell us about the studio that you owned. How did that come about?
So then,
what
you know,
did you do?
because I wanted to record my own music, so I started just buying equipment. And then, you know, as I was playing on the street, I would sell my cassettes, and I had like 5 cassette machines running all the time. And then I would just to make these cassettes, and then I'd sell them. And people would ask me how I recorded them, and I would tell them in my studio. So they would come, and then the studio just started building, and I just started getting more and more interesting projects, and they would just kind of feed into each other, the recording and the performing.
Okay. So were these people who were coming to record with you professional musicians? Were they hobbyists? Were they just wanting to get something down on tape?
There were, you know, independent record companies, and there was self-promoting musicians, and also a lot of singers, you know, that were just trying to do their own thing, and so they would come, and I would kind of help them.
Okay.
You know, achieve their vision and stuff. And I also did soundtracks for movies.
Oh, nice. Independent movies?
Yeah.
Movies that we've seen, or?
You know, it's funny. I don't think you've seen any of them. I'm sort of guessing that you haven't. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So nothing completely mainstream then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There wasn't a lot of
and I don't know if you went right from there into the next thing. You said that you toured with David Byrne from the Talking Heads. What was that like? Any fun stories? And why? How did you connect with him? And what did you do with him?
You know, when I was playing in New York, it was just a constant like interacting and connecting with people and trying to get things going. You know, so I would play with people that were playing with some of these, you know, big stars and stuff, and then so they would help me connect. So a friend that I was recording with gave one of my tapes to David Byrne, and my idea was that he would sign me to his label, which is what I really wanted.
Right.
And when he called me and asked me to go on tour with him, I was a little disappointed. It took me like 5 seconds to realize that this actually was a good opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
So was he still with the Talking Heads at that point, or was it just him alone?
Yeah, he was doing his own thing.
Okay. Did you have any chance during that touring to get any of your music played on any of those concerts, or was it pretty much just him?
Well, it was my music that I was playing, in him, in his music.
Okay.
You know,
and
he let me do my own thing.
Okay. In terms of like a riff inside.
Well, you know,
one
the
of
thing
his
is,
songs,
there were
or?
charts. Like there were like the music was all charted out, and there were lots of notes written. But the thing is, because I wasn't the greatest reader, I would sometimes get away with playing what wasn't written.
Okay.
And,
so was it?
And he'd say, like, "Is that really how it's supposed to be?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I think so."
So it was more improvisational at times then?
Well, there was a lot of room for improvisation. You know,
Okay.
there would be places where I would take a solo and stuff.
So when you're improving music, and this may be a very naive question, but when you're improving music, does it always fall under the category of jazz? I mean, is jazz the definition of it being improvisational?
I think actually jazz is a hindrance often to improvisation.
How so?
Because it actually is. It's much more structured than people are aware of.
Okay.
And the rules are kind of severe.
Gotcha.
And if you could screw it up, and you get looks from people. If you didn't play that A sharp 5 with a diminished 7th minor thing right. You know? So to me, improvisation, when I think of improvisation, it's much more free. Like you can just take what you're feeling.
Right.
And if you know, if you kind of, it's sort of like confidence. Learning some of these like rules are more about just building confidence so that you feel like you know what you're doing. But I do a lot of improvisation where I literally can close my eyes and just like play and just feel it. It's you know, it's amazing what you can do when you just let it go.
Sure. We have an improv troupe at Prescott Center for the Arts, the Improvatonians, who I work with on a regular basis. And, I love improv, the freedom. You don't have to worry about a script. You're just flowing along. But it's I guess, I don't know if this is the right term, more intellectual, because you're using language to communicate. Obviously, music is a language that you're using to communicate. I would not be able to speak that music, that language, if I were trying to improv music. Is it any different than with spoken language?
I think it's interesting because I've seen like this improv groups, and I wonder, like how many riffs they have in their brains.
Right.
Because I have a feeling that they kind of like there's things that they are ready to take out, to say and to do.
Right.
Under different circumstances, and they use them in different ways.
Right.
And it's very similar to music, where you have these sort of like motifs, and you just let them come out at certain places. And
is it? To me, I would feel like it would be. I mean, obviously you're listening in spoken word improv as well, but with musical improv, you really have to listen to what the others are doing, right? I mean, so that it meshes.
But don't you with theater improv?
Well, yes, of course, but that's what I'm getting to is you're using language so that there is an intellectual understanding. That's what I was getting. Do you have that kind of language in music as well?
There are like different languages, so I think that there's sometimes you need an interpreter. And that, because people have different experiences in the way they think of music. But so maybe it would be similar to improv without words.
Okay.
you know, which should also be an interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, sure. You could absolutely do an improv without words, without a doubt.
And so, like, a lot of jazz musicians like can't improv with rock and roll musicians because they think there's this belief that that they're a different language. But actually, music is a universal language.
Sure.
You know?
Yes.
So, I think people forget that. You know.
Right. They do. I think they do. Now, you also spent a good deal of time in Africa with the Maasai tribe, learning about community music and its healing powers. Tell us about those experiences. How did that change you?
I'd be in villages where the entire village, actually, I start to cry thinking about this because it's incredibly powerful.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because these are groups of people that are struggling with challenges that we cannot comprehend.
I can imagine.
You know, where death is around every corner, where the oppression, the Maasai are on pretty much the lowest on the economic ladder in Kenya, which is a poor country. You know? So it's life is hard. You know? So you have these villages of people, and they all sing together, and when they're singing, they're happy. You know, the joy is so real and deep. And so, you know, I'm there and with people that go days without eating and own the teacup. That's what they own, is their teacup. And then I come back here and there's all this, you know, sadness, and there's this kind of life, there's this kind of apathy and stuff. And that's part of this inspiration with starting this organization, because I know how powerful music is when people do it together.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And you know, when you're raised in a culture where you don't question your musicality, then it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, I remember as a boy on Long Island for July 4th, there was a beach that all neighbors shared, and on July 4th we would get together, and by the end of the night we'd have a big roaring campfire and everyone would be sitting on logs around it, and they would start singing folk songs, and that would connect you to everybody else. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Across the Universe. It's about Beatles music and taking place in the 60s. And there's one segment of the movie where there's, about 8 or 9 people, and they're all lying down with their heads in the middle in a circle. Yeah. And they just start singing a Beatles song. And every time I watch the movie and I see that scene, it occurs to me that in general, in this country, we don't sing together. No. And I think that's a crime. I think, you know, when we were at a time in our country where we did sing together, it made us more whole. Would you agree with that?
Totally. Yeah. So that's my passion right now. And practically every time I would say 99% of the time I meet a new person, I ask them, you know, do they play music? And 99% of the time, it's like I used to, or I can't carry a tune in a bucket. You know, like there's so many these caveats, you know, about their musicality. Right. You know.
Yes. Well, I think you said it a little earlier, where the music is not something that just flows out of a lot of people here in this country. It's, you know, we turn the radio on, or we put a CD in.
To me, that's part of the crime.
Yeah. The music is given to us as opposed to it coming out of us.
Right. The music industry, actually, I believe, has built itself on this untruth that we need other people to make music for us. It cannot exist if we really know how musical we are and how much music we can make together. Right. And so I actually see the music business is kind of falling apart. And to me, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah. It's just what we need.
Let me ask this while it's in my head, because it's not written down. It goes to a little bit of what you were saying. What is your take on today's music? You know, what you hear on the radio, the things that people are winning Grammys for. Is any of it music you listen to? Is any music you think that is worthwhile listening to?
Actually, you know, like this brings up an interesting point, and it's a conversation that's been going on forever. I'm sure. About what is music. You know, like a lot of people will say, like is the sound of someone dropping a bucket of marbles on the floor? Is that music?
Interesting.
To me, that's more musical than mostly what I hear. Because I feel like, to me, music is sound that connects us and that moves people and that is human made, and that I'm including all the animals and the plants in there. There's music of the spheres. There's music that's happening all around us all the time. It's our interactions with each other, and then there's these sounds that are used to manipulate us, and it's you could think of the jingles and the ads and stuff, which is specifically designed to manipulate. But then there's also the music industry where the music is created for a very specific purpose.
Sure.
And no matter how artistic what some of these performers are, it's taken and it's processed and it's edited. And the whole thing is designed to make money.
Oh, sure.
And
of course.
And money is a very undimensional value.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
well, it's artificial. Money doesn't exist in nature. We've created it.
Right. And then we're slaves to it. And we feel like, and then all the people in the music industry, they depend, their jobs are depending on them changing the music so that it will continue this process. So I have strong feelings about that.
Right. So these lessons that you learned over in Maasai, or these experiences you had with the Maasai people, led to this Music for People's Musician Leadership Program. What was that about, and what did you do
Well,
with
what's
it?
interesting is it happened at the same time. It was timed perfectly.
Okay.
So that I went to Kenya. The first time I went there, I came back and went straight into this Music for People program.
Okay.
And so it felt like there was nothing, I was in a plane and then I was back where I was. Except it was just a bunch of people making music from their hearts again, And so it was music that was just flowing out of people. And so it was a group that's designed for that purpose, where people are learning how to just let that music flow. And so a lot of these people were kind of they were ready for it, And so I immediately signed up for this 4-year program. I said, this is what I have to do. And what the 4-year program is to learn how to facilitate groups.
Okay.
And so to kind of bring more people into this fold, So, and then they continued completely. For 4 years, I was going to Kenya and then coming back and doing this Music for People program. Okay. So it was just this constant interplay. In fact, I was working on a documentary in Kenya at this one time, and it was like going really well, and like the Maasai leader, I said I have to go, because I have to get to this Music for People thing, and he was like, no, you can't go, because we're on the verge of something here, But I said, when I explained what the Music for People was about, he lit up and he said, this is you got to go, because it was connected. Like he knew that we're the connection.
Gotcha. Very nice. So, what sort of things would you? would you do with this program when you came back here? Was it certain age groups or denominations?
Well, it covered everything. People trying to just create that safety, the space where people feel like it's their place to be creative musically, and to get some of these things out of the way. Like their ideas of structure, what needs to be, in place.
Gotcha. To free themselves up from the constraints of that's bad, that's good.
Right.
Those
it's
sorts of things.
It's incredible how much of that stuff permeates everything.
Yes. We're filled with that every day.
Yeah. I have students where we were working on something and suddenly we realize together that there's some real trauma, that they're actually working through some early childhood trauma through the music, because they're seeing how, wow, this can flow. But I was taught that it couldn't.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I don't have a very good musical ear, and I've been told all my life, you can't sing. So I started believing it.
Right, and then you keep telling yourself, just like you did just now.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I have found that in my later life, I tried to let go of that more and just, I know now I can at least carry a tune. I'm certainly not an opera singer or anything like that, but I would feel confident, playing my guitar.
In the opera.
I don't know if I want to. I don't have the opera gene, but
it would have to be up to the audience to be transformed. They'd have to readjust their perceptions of what opera is.
Right. Well, there'd be a lot of transformation there.
Yeah,
but,
and that's what music is for. It transforms people,
right.
And you have to take chances.
Yes.
And you have to every time I do a performance, I know I'm taking a chance. It scares the crap out of me. Like, what's going to happen this time?
Right. Right.
And I know that everyone's going to change, and they don't always know it.
Okay. Interesting. And now, then from there, I believe you transitioned into or grew into this thing called the comMUSIKey. What is that?
You said that very well.
Thank you very well. Thank you very much. Can you tell us how that came about and what it is and what you do with it?
So, after I graduated from this Music for People program, and I was doing this, and I was like, every performance I did, I was always trying to get more kind of audience involved and just connect people. And I was teaching, and I realized that I'm running a nonprofit because I'm not making any money.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, why not get some more community support? And so I had this kind of open invitation to people to come and see who wants to be involved with this organization, And it didn't have a name, but I knew it was time. Someone had said, I'm going to give you $1,000 if you start this organization. And I thought, that should be enough to start this. I didn't realize it wasn't.
No, not even close.
But it seemed like a lot of money at that. That's where I was at the time.
Right.
And and I figured, it's a vote of confidence, and so it surely made me feel like, okay, it's time to do this thing, And so, we got a board together. We started, try to plan things, and it turns out that it's still not easy. It's not easy with music to get through a lot of that fear, and I'm working hard on this.
Your fear or other people's fears? Okay.
Both, but I'm seeing a lot of fear around music. Actually, David Byrne, speaking of which. You know that album, Fear of Music?
Vaguely,
yeah. That was Talking Heads.
Right.
And I always thought it was kind of like a joke, but it's really true.
Yeah.
There's some very deep fear.
Right. So when you get a group of people together, what transpires? What happens when you're working?
Sometimes there's a lot of shaking.
Yeah.
Like I actually had someone come to one of my play shops. She was literally trembling out of fear. And, but by the end of it, she was just joking and laughing, and everybody was happy. So it's sort of, what was the question?
So the question is, what actually transpires when you get a group of people together with the comMUSIKey?
Totally depends on the group.
Okay. Do they bring instruments? Do you provide instruments?
We provide instruments. We have instruments, and people can bring their instruments.
Okay.
But they do anyway, because they bring their voice, so they can't help but bring they bring their tummy.
Yes, that's excellent. I wasn't thinking about that.
Usually they do.
Okay.
And so it's always magic. The thing I can tell you is that it's always magic. It's always unexpected.
Right.
And
so you don't say, okay, we're all going to riff on Mary Had a Little Lamb. You just
do that. We could try that.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to try that?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
But we maybe get the group together and do something like that. That might be kind of fun. And other times, is it just something that someone begins with a sound and then people build onto that, and it just grows on its own?
You know, what I usually do is you know, we're sitting in a circle, and again, like it's always so different.
Sure.
But usually there's a circle, right? Because I want everybody to see each other, and I want people to be aware of their connection.
Sure.
So we might just kind of sit there with the silence for a little while, you know, and just kind of listen, and usually like I'm listening to what kind of groove is starting to develop, and somebody might be just like kind of, you know, going like this, and then, you know, then you could add something to that,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And then because I know that there's music always there. So it's not about like how do we create this music, it's how do we let this music happen. And we use whatever tools we have. Like
So it's a very organic
I do know a
process.
lot of music theory, right? So I personally use those tools. But I think that the most important tools are tools that we have in our lives just by living. So we have the listening.
Sure.
We have caring. You know, we have the desire to communicate. And there's like leadership skills. And there's people that care enough about something to take the lead.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
So, and there's like giving space. There's sharing. You know, the ability to share. So these are the most important musical skills, and they get undervalued compared to all the ones that you're taught in conservatory.
Right. Right. To make beautiful
Right.
noise, or what it might be.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is actually somewhat therapeutic for some people.
Yes. I mean, it's totally therapeutic. I mean, music.
I would assume that includes you as well. You get something out of that as
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, usually like if I'm in a really bad mood, and like I have like oftentimes I'll be in a really bad mood. I don't know if you know that, but
No.
So I'm in a
Good
really
to know.
bad mood, and then I know I'm going to do this play shop. I'm going to do
Yes.
some kind of musical thing.
Okay.
Maybe it's a performance or something, and I feel like this is going to be really. It's not going to be good, you know,
Because
I'm
of the way you're feeling.
I'm feeling bad, you
Right.
know? But then it happens, and I feel good,
Awesome.
and I feel good the whole time.
So
You know, so I've also discovered if I'm depressed and I sing, I can't do both simultaneously. It's like
yeah. Right.
it's impossible. You know, you start singing, you're not depressed. You can't be. So oftentimes I'm so depressed that I'm not going to sing because
Right.
I want to be depressed. It's easier to be depressed.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
It's much easier to wallow. Absolutely.
Wallow, yeah.
Yes. So, and again, I can see that you don't really fix yourself in labels of music and that sort of thing, but would that not give rise to the blues if
the
you were
blues is a
depressed?
perfect example. The blues is a beautiful, it's an open, it's a simple form, and you know, it gives you space. It's designed for that purpose, for expression of just feeling. You
Sure,
know?
but there are rules there too. I mean, or at least imposed
They're
rules that
so
we
simple.
can free ourselves
They're-
of.
You know, we could learn these rules right now. I mean, it's just you just got to go. That's. Is that hard? Is that hard?
No,
Really?
no, not at all. Okay, that's nice that it's easy.
Yeah.
So, very cool. Now, how did you get involved playing and perhaps even composing the scores for silent films that with Prescott Film Festival? How'd that come about?
I don't really know how that happened. It just they called me and asked me to do it,
Okay.
and I think it worked well. You know, I actually used some of my film scoring experience with that. You know, so it's
Right.
Yeah.
So, and are you the only one playing when they're showing those films?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that improv, or do you have an idea of what's...
Completely. Like I'll watch. You know, sometimes I don't even watch the whole movie beforehand. I'll always like watch the beginning and the end.
Okay.
You know, because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I usually have an idea of what I'm going to. I get some motifs together.
Okay.
But by the end of the movie, I've forgotten what I planned, and because it becomes a new thing. I'm following the journey of the movie. You know.
Okay. So nothing is pre-written when you do those.
No, I don't write stuff.
So, and unfortunately, I have not attended any of those. But if they had more than one screening, would someone be apt to then hear something very different one time between the next, even though it's the same film being shown?
Right. Yeah,
So
that would be interesting to like if you could, you know, market this thing with all of these different soundtracks,
right.
depending on your mood, you know.
Sure. I believe it was last season I had a visual artist here interviewing, and we somehow the question came up: does music influence their painting or their drawing? Has that ever? I mean, I know you don't probably really draw a whole lot anymore, but when you were a child and you were drawing back then, did you listen to music while you were drawing? Did that have any influence on you?
I don't remember listening to music while I was drawing, but I think that it seems like it went. I think that when I didn't think that I was going to be able to be. They don't have drawing rock stars.
No.
And that's what I really wanted.
Okay.
So I think that's why. I think I was drawing, and I was really into that, you know. But I did a performance one time, you know, community performance, and I got so much attention, that positive attention, because, you know, these are all the community I grew up in, you know, that I was like, wow, you know, I couldn't let go of that.
Right.
And so I think I sort of transitioned. I took like the passion that I had with the drawing, and I kind of moved it. It was the same kind of creative energy, and I moved it into the music.
Okay. So when you are playing either for a silent film or you're just creating something in the moment, whether it's with a group or by yourself, do you see things?
I see the movie.
Well, yes, of course. But I mean, do you think?
But
are there things you see in your head that influence the music that you're playing?
If I'm composing, that's interesting. I see people. It's pretty, you know, vague.
Sure,
I mean, it's
sure.
Like there's images, you know, and I see, you know, like my own trauma or something, like my own hurt, you know, things. It's usually like, or joy, you know, like the joy comes through. But the thing is, what happens is like it takes all those elements, and I'm not sure how visual. They're sort of like. It's a really good question, because I'm trying to actually visualize what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I know that there's so much emotional stuff coming in, and it kind of merges, and because the humor, what's beautiful about it is that humor comes in with some of the real deep pain. Okay. And it comes and mixes up with it, and then it comes out in a new form that helps me get through the day.
Okay. So as we were discussing this, something else popped into my head. I don't know if you have seen the original Disney Fantasia or the new one that they did.
I didn't see the new one.
Okay. That in and of itself is very much like the process we're talking about, where it is certainly music. Obviously, it's very written music, but you had these animators who decided to create something visual based on that.
Yeah, it was sort of the back going the other direction.
Right.
They were making the visuals to go with the music.
Right, and of course it's just completely interpretation. We could have asked a whole different set of animators and would have gotten completely different animation than visuals than the ones who did end up doing it. So sort of the same. Yeah,
I wonder. Kind of they might have riffed off it too in a similar way, where they just kind of doodled. I was reading recently about the power of doodling.
Yes,
and I like to apply that to music. You know, like just doodle, and then see what happens. You know, it takes you to places.
So, I've spoken with several writers, either short stories, novelists, whatever they might be, and usually they have a set process that they use. A lot of them get up early in the morning and start writing right away, just while the brain is fresh and there's not a lot of other things interfering with what's going on. And they do it as a habit so that they can obviously they need to produce sorts of things. Do you get out of the bed, sit down to the piano, start playing music?
I don't have habits.
Okay.
I have lots of other kinds of habits. But in terms of like trying to, it just comes when it wants to. Really.
Okay.
Like I don't have any kind of like schedule that I try to follow.
Okay.
Because it's not something that I'm trying to make happen. It's always been that way. It's something that I can't avoid.
Yeah, sure. I had a short story class one time with Daniel Keyes, the man who wrote Flowers for Algernon.
Really?
And one of the few things I remember him saying that has just stuck with me all these years is he would get an idea, he might write it down just so he didn't forget it, but he would put it away and he would only start writing something if it kept coming back.
Okay, right. That's actually, I actually have a loose leaf book. It's about this thick, and it goes on the cover. It says Shop 501 or whatever, and that was in 7th grade. It was my shop,
right?
Loose leaf, and so I still have that, and I have little snippets of lyrics that go all the way back there, and I rate whenever I like some kind of line that just has a cool sound to it. I put it in there,
right.
And I think I'm going to use it. And sometimes I do. I actually have gone through it, but generally, like I'll sit down. Like I have written for particular things. In fact, both of them were at Unitarian churches. I wrote 2 songs for specific situations, and I remember sitting down and just like feeling this, like feeling what I'm feeling around this topic, right? And my hands just start kind of moving on the keyboard, and I start singing, but I don't know what I'm singing about, and I just let it happen.
Nice.
And then I start to kind of say, okay, I'm seeing what this is about, and then I kind of like massage it in that direction so that it has some kind of like focus to it.
Do you ever get the sense, because I know I've heard Neil Simon say this, and I've dabbled in playwriting at times, and I completely agree with him. It's like the characters are channeling, they're just using me to get their words on paper. Do you feel that the music is out there, something is just flowing through you, that you're taking it from somewhere out of you? Right,
and that's why like I just really feel like it's available to everyone. It's like the air. It would be like saying that only certain people get to breathe. Like it's just there. It's all happening, And so I am lucky that no one made me do it in a certain way. When I was like playing the piano when I was a kid, and my mother, for whatever reason, didn't even offer me piano lessons, but she let me put the piano in my room so I could just play it, out of, wouldn't disturb anybody.
Right. So do you ever wake up like at 3 o'clock in the morning and out of a dead sleep and just... do you dream music?
Yeah. I've actually, I wrote a song that came from a dream.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's happened a few times, but it was once I remember specifically.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Of all the things that you have done, is there something you still are wanting to do artistically, musically? Is there something you have not been able to do yet?
Yeah, because I used to always, kind of marvel at all these different like musical revolutions. Like you look down through the ages at all these things that changed. Jazz, but then within jazz you have these different other, but then you have, music of the Renaissance, you have, Baroque music, and each one of these was like a new transformation. And so I always wondered, and then, hip hop came along and like rock and roll, people thought hip hop wasn't music, and then all these things, rock and roll wasn't music.
Right.
And so what is the next musical revolution, the genre that's going to come and change everything?
Right.
I feel like it's everybody playing music together. I mean, it's like it happened before, but it's going to happen now in a different way. It's going to happen in relation to our modern times, using like the technologies that we have and all the kind of social relationships that we have.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's the same. It's just as crazy. It's just as rock and roll was, you know, where people would say, "This ain't music," you know. Shut that out, you know. Turn that off.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And so, like, everybody playing music together is going to freak out the whole music industry, and it's going to the whole economic system is going to freak over this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've had a thought for a long time where let's assume that classical music is the pinnacle of music. Let's just assume that. Let's assume that for the moment.
Okay.
And of course, that comes out of 1700s, 1800s, and then you get into the 1900s, where you start having operettas. You start you start getting into Tin Pan Alley, pop music, the Great American Songbook, which then leads, and then you got Broadway in there, which then again begins to lead toward rock and roll and those things that have come after. Do you see that as a decline in music?
Which one?
Any of them. If we go from classical to, say, rap.
See, to me, the decline is with the music industry.
Okay.
And so, and it's not any of the genres. It's the way they've been packaged
and we're told that's how we should listen to it, and that's how we should interpret it. Is that kind of what you're
thinking? Yeah, we're kind of given, a bill of goods about this stuff, Okay. And so...
Because we love labels, so we're trying to label everything.
Music is music, and to me, there's no, like, art music, and then there's, somebody was telling me, like, there's the art music, there's people music, there's music that people make together. For each other. They're gifts to each other. They're, that we share. And so music that's not about sharing is like not that impressive to me,
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of this, and the way classical music, then you got, Schoenberg started creating all this weird stuff, that was very intellectual. And was it really like connecting to people? Like were people really connecting as and yet that was considered, that's where classical music was going, in that direction. It was like going farther away from people.
Right. Okay. Very nice. So I think those are pretty much all the questions I had for the most part. For the folks who are here, does anybody have a question for Jonathan? Yes.
There was a movie this last year, and I don't remember the title, but it was about a young drummer and his teacher, and he went to a Juilliard type of a school. That seems confining, constricting, from your point of
Juilliard?
view. Those type of music schools, this was a brutal instructor.
Yeah.
Getting the most out of this young man to the point where he didn't want to make music anymore. And I just wondered, because you said you did eventually take some form of training, but it wasn't from a school, it wasn't a music school.
Well, I went to school, I took classes, individual classes but it was really about what I wanted to learn about. It wasn't to, get a degree or anything. So, but I actually know some people that have literally been traumatized by music school, and I know a guy. I'm sure that there's people in this room, but I know a guy that I was with his mother when he called her, like crying on the phone, like the intensity of like what he had to deal with, of what he was told he had to do, and the fear of succeeding, and that's not what music is about.
And yet it seems like in the formal world of high-level musicianship, they're looking for people from that background that have survived it somehow.
Yeah, people that, sort of like the army, you want a certain kind of person, that's going to You know, and it's sort of brings up this whole, you know, child prodigy thing. And I actually, because they're destined for this, they're going to go in that direction. And I don't believe it. I don't really believe in child prodigies. I don't think that like certain children are just like musically gifted in a very, that I think they're kind of created actually. There's an agenda involved. I have strong feelings, and sometimes I make these sweeping statements, but they're to make a point. You know, there may be nuances to it that I'm not, you know, talking about, but I'm trying. It's something that I think is important.
Absolutely. Well, I think what you're getting at is something that is endemic at least in the United States here, in our society, and I'm sure in many others. We love to label.
Yeah,
we want people to fit into certain categories, and you want to find what are the strengths, where should that person be going, you know, as opposed to creating a whole person who can do a myriad number of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's an economic
debilitating.
System. Yeah. I think our economic system is built on this.
Yes, absolutely.
It's how things are marketed. It's how everything is put together.
Right. Well, yeah, because you have a child who might be able to play, you know, Tchaikovsky brilliantly on the piano, but can't scramble an egg because they just don't have the ability.
Yeah, or else they're so focused on playing every note perfectly
that
they're not able to like just listen and be creative, you know. And I just like I was saying before about the musical skills and the music, like. To say that somebody is musically gifted is a very narrow way to look at, because there's so many ways to be musical.
Yes.
And so maybe somebody can read, you know, you might have photographic memory, and you could look at a piece of music and memorize it and then just play it.
Right.
And that's amazing, but is that necessarily the highest form of music?
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Yeah.
That is an excellent question. What I was about to say, though, is, you know, I think we're getting close to the end of the hour here, and it'd be kind of fun to maybe ask some people if anyone wanted to come up and see if we can do just some music going out of the show.
Okay,
you know,
come on up.
Some music. Let's go.
And then people who are in the audience can just like help with the rhythm and stuff, you know.
Everybody music, it's an ancient genre and the latest craze. Everybody music, it's a human revolution, not a passing phase. 'Cause everybody is a musical body designed from the ground up to connect. And everyone can be a music gardener. All you got to do is sow seeds of music wherever you go.
Don't forget to water them, though.
Everybody music, it's awesome.